Final Fantasy XVI's trailer reveal back in 2020 got me really excited, especially after finishing FF7 Remake. I'll be honest though, I'm not a die-hard fan and I won't pretend that I always have been. I know I've probably missed out on some great games within the series and I might consider going back to play a few of them if I can. Anyway, the first one I played through entirely was FF15, and despite being fully aware of the controversy surrounding that game, it still holds a special place for me. I might share my thoughts on 15 in the future, we'll see how things go. Anyway, after the negative reception FF15 received for not having a complete story at launch, game producer Naoki Yoshida aimed to ensure that the story for 16 remained coherent and well planned. This effort definitely shows, as the game incorporates a variety of features that keep you informed no matter where you're at in the story. Yeah, I can definitely say that goal was achieved perfectly in my opinion. However, as usual, it's not all perfect. I'll get into the pros and cons later on. Let me provide a brief background on the story for now. FF16 follows the story of Clive Rosfield throughout the different stages of his life, but we start off the game with him at the age of 15. He's the older son of Archduke Elwin Rosfield and his wife Annabella. Clive was supposed to actually inherit the power of the Phoenix, which unfortunately didn't happen, and then resulted in his mum looking at him as a failure and resenting him. His younger brother Joshua actually ended up getting the dominant Phoenix instead, so Clive was chosen to take on the role as his brother's first shield. Clive then receives a bit of his brother's powers in order to help protect him further. But during an attack on the castle, the Archduke is killed trying to protect Joshua, and this results in him losing control of his powers. Clive tries to calm him down but isn't successful. Joshua then transforms into the Phoenix icon, which unfortunately causes more destruction around him. Now I don't want to go into too much details on what happens next, as I want to try and avoid as much spoilers as possible. But I do recommend playing the demo if you haven't already. It's very well put together and will definitely be a great way to decide on whether you want to give this game a chance or not. You can also carry over your progress from the demo into the full game, which is a great feature, so definitely check it out. Going back to what I said earlier about following the story a lot easier, there are various mechanics to keep you in the loop at all times. For example, if you hold down the touchpad on the controller, it brings up an active time lore feature, which will give you information on current events taking place, and also about characters and things like that. You can also find allies within your hideout to keep you updated on locations and enemy types, or pretty much anything you need to know about. It's a well thought out system that's incredibly helpful. One of the things that stood out to me while watching the first trailer was the combat looking very similar to Devil May Cry, specifically 5. Which makes sense as game designer Ryota Suzuki worked on those games and was brought on board to add his own flair to the combat mechanics. More and more special moves and finishes become available as you progress through the story. You can actually mix and match certain moves to fit your preferred playstyle, which I'm a big fan of. I almost forgot to mention actually, you can replay boss fights and stages after beating them, which is great. There's also an option that allows you to practice the combat system on a variety of enemies to get you more accustomed to their patterns and things like that. And as far as performance goes, there were a few hiccups while playing on a high frame rate, so I ended up just using graphics mode instead. But other than that, the game didn't have any issues whatsoever. Well, maybe a few. But visually, I will say it looks incredible during certain locations, but definitely more so during boss fights and cutscenes of course. I can see the power of the PS5 getting pushed hard during these moments. My console actually switched itself off for the first time during one of these boss fights, but apart from that I didn't actually experience any glitches at all, which is a breath of fresh air after playing Jedi Survivor. Based on the games I've played within the series, the soundtrack has always been on point for the most part, and this game definitely didn't fall short here either. Composer Masayoshi Soken did an incredible job at capturing and enhancing each moment perfectly with the soundtrack. I personally enjoyed it more during boss battles, but overall it was a great experience. Anyway, those are all the positives I can think of. Let's get to the negatives now. This game unfortunately had some issues that I personally couldn't ignore, but I'll start off with a minor thing that I felt was missing, and that was elemental weakness. I really enjoyed the idea of facing enemies that are weak against certain icons that I've equipped based on their elemental moves. It just adds more of a strategic feel to the combat, and that was something I really enjoyed in the past entries. It's not that big of a deal, but I felt like it would have made things a lot better for me personally. There are multiple side quests in the game as you would expect, but from what I remember, there aren't many additional activities apart from monster hunts and chronolith trials, if I'm pronouncing that properly. Personally, I do wish there were more options apart from side missions, but that pretty much covers my thoughts on that part. Okay, regarding the combat, it's great that you can have a party with you. However, most of the time it seemed like I was battling these enemies alone, in comparison to previous entries where it felt like your party members were present and could be used. And yes, I know you can use toggle for certain attacks and to string up combos, but it just didn't give me that same feel. Don't get me wrong though, my connection with these characters in the game did improve as the story progressed, it just didn't reach that level that I'd hoped for initially. And I don't want to compare too much, but this is where I think FF15 and 7 Remake really excelled at. But anyway, there's a whole list of other things too, but I feel like those are just personal nitpicks, so they're not really worth mentioning. These are just the ones that really stuck out to me, ones I could remember at least. Overall, this game was an interesting experience. I felt the high action moments really hit hard, especially when it didn't drag on too long. But then when you do the regular side missions, it just seems so slow and boring in comparison. And yeah, I get it can't always be high action all the time, as that would get repetitive. But I unfortunately wasn't too engaged with most of the side quests. I just found myself on autopilot while doing them. I know it's optional, but if you want the best items and the strongest weapons, then that's the method. Which is even more annoying, because by the time you get those weapons, you've pretty much beaten all the top tier bosses anyway, but that's just how it goes with these games. Luckily, the story was well done and engaging enough to keep me playing. And like I said earlier, you do connect with these characters as the story progresses, and even some of the side characters too, surprisingly. It's clear that this game took quite a bit of inspiration from Game of Thrones, and it definitely shows as you progress through the story. So yeah, those are my thoughts on FF16. Let me know down below what you thought about the game, or if you agree or disagree with certain things I might have said. And thank you so much for checking out the video if you made it this far. Anyway, that's all I've got for now, so I'll catch you in a bit.